Welcome to the sixth edition of the Ohio Valley Sports Podcast. I'm Cody Anderson.
DJ.
I'm Ian.
Today we're going to start with the World Series. The Red Sox are leading 3-2. They managed to take 2 of 3 in St. Louis, which comes to a surprise to me. I don't know about you. But we're going to let Ian take the floor since he is a giant Red Sox fan. Ian?
It's warm. It's really good to see Boston's bats finally get going after they struggled in that Detroit series mightily. You cannot say enough about David Ortiz. Just when there are people in this world who don't believe in the clutch factor in sports and especially in baseball, and then there are those of us that watch David Ortiz in the World Series. The guy is batting 11 for 15 in 5 games in the World Series. That's a 733 batting average. He has a 789 on base percentage, and he has a 1.267 slugging percentage. Then last night, you can't say enough about what Jon Lester's done. He's proven that he is the ace of this staff the entire postseason. He went 4-1 with a 1.56 ERA in the postseason. An absolutely unbelievable record in the postseason, facing the best competition that you can face night in and night out, and he did it for 5 nights. Unbelievable stuff. An underrated part of this team, I think, is Xander Bogaerts. Xander Bogaerts, he's 21 years old. You have to remember that. This is his first season in the major leagues. He's been rated as the top prospect in the Sox organization for a long time, and he's showing why in this postseason. He has a 294 average in the World Series and a 316 OBP, but he has a 728 on-base OPS. He's hit doubles. He's hit triples. He's hit clutch hits when they need it. He's been a really, really good option at the bottom of that lineup, where usually you start to see lineups kind of like, maybe we'll get through this. I don't know. The series goes back to Boston. The last 2 games. 1 win, and the Sox will win their first World Series in Fenway Park since 1918.
Ouch.
It's been a long, long time since it's happened. A big thing that I think you're going to see really, really help the Red Sox is if they needed it at this point. Mike Napoli gets to come back into the lineup now.
Mm-hmm.
And David Ortiz gets to return to the DH spot. Also, Shane Victorino is coming back to the lineup in Game 6. There's another huge player in that lineup that's coming back for this team. I'm worried about tomorrow night for one reason and one reason only. Michael Wacha.
Yes.
This postseason, and you can look at the win-loss record and the ERA and all of that wonderful stuff, but the number that I'm going to focus on most is the opponent's batting average. When he's on the mound, opponents are batting 122 against him the entire postseason. That's ridiculous numbers for a rookie to be putting up in a postseason. No team, however, has won 2 games on the road to win a World Series since when?
The 1979 Pirates.
The 79 Pirates were the last team to do it. But I'm going to pose this one question to you two. Is this the weirdest World Series you have ever seen in your lives?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it is. It's just really, it's the 2 best teams. It's the first time since the mid '90s since we've had that in the World Series. Normally, a team gets hot late, they parlay that into a World Series run. But these have been the 2 best teams in the league all year. But it's led to some really weird play. I mean, I know you didn't really want to get into it, but the obstruction call, that's probably the weirdest ending to any baseball game I've ever seen, but especially a World Series game. But I think Boston closes it out tomorrow night. I know it's going to be really hard to beat Michael Wacha, but Boston hit him last time. They just shot themselves in the foot at the end of the game. Cody, you have any thoughts on this really weird World Series?
Yeah, I've really been impressed with Lester. This is twice now he's gone up against Wainwright, and you think if you're a Boston fan, and Ian, I know you agree with this, you go against Wainwright twice in a 7-game series, you're lucky to split that. If you split that, that's a win. And he came out and outpitched him twice because I don't think Wainwright pitched a bad game. He had 10 strikeouts. I mean, his first 6 outs were Ks.
Yeah.
So maybe he slowed down, I guess, towards the end of the game. But this is the one thing, and I don't know if it's the difference because, I mean, every night for Boston it seems like somebody else is coming up. Johnny Gomes, a 3-run homer.
Yeah.
He wasn't even supposed to play.
Yeah.
And he gets an opportunity, 3-run homer. Yesterday was David Ross had a big hit. He had a double. But what my thing is, Ian, if you're the Cardinals, why aren't they taking the approach that teams took to Barry Bonds back when he was hitting home runs and just being ridiculous? Why don't they walk Ortiz?
I mean, listening to Wainwright last night after the game, and there were people asking him, why didn't you just walk Ortiz? Now you got to remember the situation that was leading up to that. Pedroia had just hit a double to get on second base, but you got to remember, Wainwright said he had decided before the game even started that he wasn't going to walk Ortiz because he doesn't Wainwright is not a guy that likes to give up walks.
It's true.
Now, I'm sure you go back and you look, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Waka go walk Ortiz every time he comes up to the plate.
I wouldn't expect it from the Cardinals, though. They're a team that's very resistant to change. They're a team that you would normally see like in the 60s playing baseball. They don't really go for sabermetrics. They don't go for anything like that. But with David Ortiz, now say the bases are empty. Say it's a situation where the bases are empty. Why wouldn't you walk him? He's not going to hurt you on the base pass.
No,
I mean, you're gonna need a home run or at least 2 more hits for him to score.
I mean, the thing is, now the Sox are changing up the lineup for Game 6. Ortiz is batting in the 3rd spot, so you're going to see him in the 1st inning of Game 6 tomorrow night. It's going to happen.
I mean, and to be fair, if I remember correctly, Pedroia hit that double.
Yeah.
Wainwright hung a breaking ball. So it was a mistake. I mean, he capitalized on what you're supposed to do. But he hung him a breaking ball. Yeah. But what I'm saying is teams used to have bases loaded against Barry Bonds and walk him to give up the run.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying go to that extreme, but if I have a runner on second base or if I have a runner on first base with 2 outs and there's a base open, I'm taking my chances against anybody else but David Ortiz right now. The guy's batting 733?
733.
You cannot pitch to a guy like that. Especially, I mean, it's not like he's an Andrew McCutchen or a Gene Segura or a Carlos Gomez or a type that if you put him on first base, they're going to steal second and then you're screwed. Ortiz is a big guy. He's not going to steal a base on you.
No.
So, I mean, I can understand. I mean, Ian, you were an athlete, and we played sport. We both played sports in high school. You're a competitor and you want to beat the best, but I mean, you got to be smart.
You got to be smart
too.
about it.
I mean, maybe Wainwright's ego got the best of him, saying, you know, I'm not walking this guy. I'm better than him, and Ortiz got the better of him.
It feels like though every hit David Ortiz has it, or at least that I've seen, every extra base hit he had has been a hanging breaking ball.
Well, he's capitalizing.
You can't hang breaking. I mean. You can't hit breaking balls against anyone, but a red-hot David Ortiz.
There's an old adage in baseball that hanging breaking balls do not end up in catcher's mitts. They end up in the glove of some 5-year-old kid out in the bleachers.
Okay, and just throwing it out here, you said Ortiz was 11 for 15?
Yeah.
Let's not forget, he hit a grand slam that Carlos Beltran robbed him of. Yeah. So he really, that could have been 4 more.
That's 12 of 16. That's 12 of 15 right there.
That's ridiculous. And then
So do you think they close it out tomorrow night?
Not tomorrow because I think Michael Wacha, as much as, I don't know if they don't want to admit it, but he's really been the ace of this staff in this postseason. To be honest, I would have started him Game 1 over Wainwright because he's taken on big games and big challenges. And this is the guy that got hot before the postseason. He almost threw the no-hitter. He went 8 2/3 innings against Washington and gave up a dribbler to ruin his no-hitter. And he's just been rolling ever since that point. He shut the Pirates down to one Pedro Alvarez home run. He shut the Dodgers down.
Twice.
And
Twice.
the best part about this guy is
Not allowed. Yeah, I mean,
he was the
didn't,
17th or 18th pick in the draft. I
Right.
mean, 16 or 17 teams said, "No, we'd rather take someone else."
Yeah.
So
I
you
mean,
you better hope that they are a lot better than Michael Walken.
Yeah.
I don't see that.
Right. Right. I mean, to get back to my point, though, I mean, right, he gave up no runs against the Dodgers in 2 starts. I just see that trend continuing. Now, whether he goes 7 innings and maybe the bullpen blows it for him or something, but I think Walker gives them a strong performance and it goes to the game 7. But I just don't see. I think the Red Sox. I'm gonna change my opinion now because I mean, the Cardinals really disappointed me at home. You got to take care of business and they didn't. So I think now you're going to see the Red Sox in 7. I think they'll lose to Waka, but I mean, nobody. I mean, if you're the Cardinals, you want to see it go 7. But if you're the Red Sox, you do not want to see this game go to 7 because you just don't know what's going to happen in a game 7.
It's always weird in game 7s.
And this has been a weird series.
This has been a weird series
But
altogether.
I mean, as a casual baseball fan, the 2 best teams in baseball coming down to a game 7, you really couldn't ask for any more than that.
No, but I'm telling you what, Boston
You
does
don't
not-
want it to go
I
to
don't
a game
want it.
7.
I don't
if you're
want it.
Boston.
I don't want it.
No.
Let's move on to some college football. Ohio State coming off a really, really, really impressive win against Penn
That's
State.
an understatement.
It was something that you would see against an FCS school.
Mm-hmm.
400 plus yards rushing. They just really took Penn State to the woodshed. They have Purdue this week, and Purdue's always a really weird matchup for them. Purdue upset them in 2004, 2009, and 2011. Last year, they were their biggest threat. Me and Cody were actually at that game. Left because it was over,
And then came back
and then
the
had
stadium.
to sneak back into the stadium for overtime. And then in 2002, the national championship year, they almost beat them. It took a Craig Krenzel Hail
Holy
Mary.
Buckeye.
To Michael Jenkins, if I do
Yep.
recall.
Holy Buckeye.
So I mean, Purdue's always a tough matchup, but then in the other games, and this is taken off. This has taken out the games that Ohio State has been removed from the record due to the tattoo scandal.
Yep.
But take that away, and their wins, they're outscoring Purdue 30-9. So I mean, it's either Ohio State's gonna beat them big, or it'll be a really close, weird game where you're really gonna sweat it out if you're a Buckeye fan.
Yeah, and they just looked great on Saturday.
Unbelievable.
Braxton Miller is continuing his development. The first year, maybe year and a half, he was running, he was scrambling. Now he's staying in the pocket. He's slinging. He runs when he has to, but he's slinging. I mean, if I'm Penn State though, I don't care loss of scholarships or what. You're a Division I team. You cannot get beat that bad. They didn't even look competitive.
No.
And I mean, and I understand everything what's going on and stuff, but I mean, Ohio State's defense, I mean, the last couple of weeks has looked scoreable on, and I thought it was going to be a little closer than what it was just because, I mean, they got that good freshman quarterback. They put up a lot of points against Michigan.
That was aided by overtime, so
Right, but
that
still-
always
but-
kind of balloons the score.
No, yes, but still, they put up
Right.
points before that. I'm just saying, though, I just didn't. I thought Ohio State would win, but I mean, this is a win they needed, though.
Oh, yeah.
When all the analysts on College Game Day and all the BCS calculation stuff are just complete the top 3 and then whoever else.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this puts Ohio State back in the conversation, but this is a good first step because this is what they have to do. Ohio State didn't play a strong out-of-conference schedule.
No.
The Big Ten's been down. You have to blow teams out
You
like
gotta
this. So this is a good first step.
Yeah,
Ian?
let me just take you through some of the numbers from the Penn State game. Ohio State racked up 686 total
Wow.
yards of offense. 408 of those were on the ground. That's dominance up front by an offensive line that a lot of people saw get dominated in the past
Yeah,
couple of games.
Against Iowa, yeah.
Against Iowa, against Northwestern, even going back further than that.
Yeah.
They had really looked beatable. Ohio State is scoring a touchdown on 53.8% of their drives. They've scored a touchdown on 50 of 93 drives this season. They're outscoring teams 143-38 in the first quarter of games this year. Now, getting into the Purdue game, I always get nervous when Ohio State plays Purdue. I always get nervous because for some reason, Ohio State just can't ever figure out how to beat Purdue. They can't do it. They always have to make it some sort of weird competitive game that's always goofy and unpredictable.
Heck of a game to be at last year, let me tell you.
You can't have a repeat of 2009.
Right.
You cannot afford a repeat of 2009. Ohio State was ranked 7th at the time.
Coming off the loss to USC.
They were ranked 7th at the time. Purdue had lost 5 games in a row, just like they have this year. And Purdue ended up beating Ohio State 26-18. You can't have that happen again. Ohio State has to go into Ross-Ade Stadium. They have to shut the door early, and they have to bury Purdue. They have to. There's no other option. You cannot let these guys hang around, or you're in a world of trouble. This Purdue team is pesky. They're young, but they're pesky. They're going to hang around with you. Purdue gets up for the Ohio State game. You know it's a blackout game at Purdue on Saturday. The crowd's going to be up for it. This is going to be a huge game for Purdue. Ohio State better be ready for it.
Interesting note, real quick, on the Purdue side. This is where a lot of you were from the Ohio Valley, and that's actually where Dan Monterosa chose to go to school. He's a freshman there. He had injured his collarbone earlier in the year, and from what I'm hearing, he should be back, if he's not back already.
He debuted against Nebraska for them, and he's been playing for them ever since.
Right, so it'll be interesting to see a local connection in a game like this. I mean, I don't think he'll make much of an impact or a difference yet because he's still only a freshman. But, I mean, he did have a good career at St. Clairsville, so it'll be interesting to see somebody local play.
Yeah, and for Purdue, their quarterback play has just been non-existent. Their starter, Rob Henry, 4 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. It's never good to be negative in that ratio. But like Ian said, they're young. They're really trying to find their way under first-year coach Darrell Hazel. 9 freshmen starting on offense.
I think it's 9 freshmen on offense.
You never know what you're going to get from a first-year player at any level. In a big game, they could get up. Ohio State just really has to take care of business. Moving on to a Big 12 matchup, WVU coming off a loss to Kansas State. Just more dismalness for the Mountaineers. They go to TCU this week. TCU, their record isn't great. They're only 3-5, but they've had a lot of close losses against good teams. In the opener, they were actually ranked in the top 25. They're the 20th team in the country. They lost 37-27 to LSU, which isn't a terrible loss, only a 10-point loss to a good SEC team. They moved on to win, but then they lost to Texas Tech by 10. They only lost to Oklahoma by 3. Oklahoma State was a 2-possession game, and then they just got blown out by Texas. So they haven't really looked terrible, but their record doesn't really show that. But just like last week, Kansas State came in with a bad record, and they beat West Virginia. So I expect it to be more of the same. West Virginia didn't even score a touchdown last week. They just had 3 field goals.
That's not true. They scored a touchdown and got the extra point blocked. That's why it looked weird.
Okay.
Even worse.
So, yeah, I mean, you couldn't even get your extra point.
No.
If Dana Holgerson's going to be your coach, you have to score. That's why they were successful the first half of last year, because they could score. They don't have the offensive weapons to do that now. They don't have a defense. Ian, any coddling words for any Mountaineer fans out there?
These words are not going to be coddling that are about to come out of my mouth. These are going to be true, hard facts.
Is it the stats again?
These are some numbers.
Oh, man.
Numbers never lie.
Numbers never lie. I love my numbers. West Virginia this season is an even 0 in the turnover category. Turn the ball over as many times as they take it away.
That'll win you games.
Against Kansas State, They allowed 157 rushing yards on 43 carries. I mean, that's not a bad average.
That's an improvement.
That
for
is
them.
an improvement.
But they allowed 291 yards passing on 21 pass attempts.
Okay,
That's
that's
bad.
not good.
18 of 21.
That's
They went
bad.
18 of 21.
Yeah.
Oof.
They only got 1 sack the entire game. They only had 9 total points in the red zone. They've only had 10 red zone touchdowns the entire season, and they've only had 22 red zone appearances all year. They're only converting 30% of their third downs.
Solid.
You can talk about
Solid
you
numbers.
You can talk about West Virginia's defense gets thrashed around a lot, but again, it comes back to their offense isn't producing at all, and especially they're not finishing off drives. They are failing to capitalize on opportunities where they can score points, and that's where the issues come.
Hey, Ian, what did we say last week West Virginia had to do to stay in this game?
Let me see if I remember.
They had to score early.
Yeah.
They did it this week.
Mhm.
They led at halftime. It was 9-7 West Virginia. They came out and added a field goal in the third quarter. It was 12-7. But all the stats you went over about them outscoring their opponent in the fourth quarter and even the third quarter, they just didn't really show up.
Yeah.
Whether it was good adjustments by Kansas State or what, they had a lead. Granted, it wasn't a big lead, but they had a lead, and then that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, Kansas State scored how many unanswered points on them?
28.
Yeah, 28 unanswered. I mean, the game was close in the first half, which is something new for West Virginia.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because they're just inexperienced and don't know how to win yet. Maybe they made a mistake going to the Big 12. I mean, I know.
Well, I think
you
that's
had to go
become pretty
somewhere.
obvious.
I know they had to go somewhere.
You don't want to be stuck in the America East Conference.
The American Athletic Conference,
American
or whatever,
Athletic
whatever
Conference.
it is.
I mean, would they have done much better in that conference anyway with Florida State and Miami?
Well,
that's
that's
the
the ACC.
I'm sorry. That's
the American
This is the
Ath-
AAC.
Right, it's
Right,
a combination of
right,
Big
right.
East
Yeah,
and
I'm sorry.
Conference
They were
USA
in the
schools.
Big East, which I mean, I guess it was good for West Virginia because the Big East was crumbling. They were competitive in the Big East, but I mean, were the teams that good?
No.
So I mean, I guess it's good for West Virginia because now they're in a better conference. They're going to see better competition all year round. So that eventually they're going to be able to compete with these teams. But if I'm the West Virginia fan base, you just got to be patient. I don't think Holgorsen is going to be there in the next year or so. But you gotta realize, I mean, you jumped to a conference. You were playing in it's like you were playing in Division 1A and then you jumped up to Division 1. That's seriously how much I think the Big East was that terrible. So it's gonna take time for them to adjust and maybe start getting back to their winning ways, but it'll be a while.
Yeah, and do you think, I mean, when they were in the Big East, I mean, they didn't have to travel much. All the teams were pretty close. I mean, now they have to take a plane to Texas or Oklahoma every weekend when they're on the road.
I don't want to use that
I'm
as
not
an
saying
excuse,
that's an excuse.
But not in football when you make one trip a week. Now in basketball, maybe, because if you play 3 times a week, you play in Texas, then you go to Kansas, then you go to Oklahoma. I can see how that could be tiring, and I mean that would affect me. But not in football. Not when you go an hour plane ride. And, I mean, they probably get there Friday.
Yeah, they get there Friday probably.
I'm not buying that. Maybe in basketball when you're traveling 3 days a week. But not in football with once a week.
Okay, moving on to Ohio. We previewed their game last week twice. It was what we expected. They really just blew out Miami. Miami really wasn't in it from the beginning. But Ian, do you want to tell us what they're on a bye week this week? Do you want to tell us any bye week thoughts for the Bobcats?
Ohio just with that win over Miami, 5th straight year of bowl eligibility for a program that had really been
6-2 now.
6-2
That's
this
great.
year. 5th straight year of bowl eligibility for this program. They also now sit all time at 531, 531, 48. It's the first time that they've been at 500 since the start of the 1995 season.
That's excellent
It's
news.
another huge milestone in the program. 7th win over Miami in the last 8 years.
I always take that.
You're always happy to that. And dating back to 2011, Ohio has won 21 of 28 games that they've played. For a MAC school, that is unbelievably impressive. Next game up at Buffalo on a Tuesday night. Yeah, it's the MAC.
Yeah,
Tuesday night games are the norm. This is a huge, pivotal game in the MAC East. Bulls have won their last 6 games. They're 6-2 overall. Buffalo runs a very balanced offense. You know, they have a really good passing attack and they have a really good ground attack. But you're going to have, if you're Ohio's defense, you're going to have to stop Brandon Oliver, the leading running back for this Buffalo offense. He has 874 yards and 9 touchdowns this year. I mean, he is the best running back in the conference, without question. He's the best running back. They're also going to have to get pressure on the quarterback, and they're going to have to protect Tyler Tettleton from Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack is, without doubt, the best linebacker in the MAC. He has 54 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and 3 interceptions.
He's a guy you hear about getting a lot of NFL attention.
And rightfully so. He's a dominant player.
Right, I'm not going to say he's the best linebacker in the nation because that's a stretch.
That's a stretch.
But I think he's top 10.
Oh, easily.
It's always impressive, though, when, say like me and Cody, people who don't really follow the MAC, can recognize a guy from a school like Buffalo. That's big.
I do want to throw this out there. Dante Foster on Saturday became Ohio's all-time touchdown receptions leader with 20. He had 8 catches for 122 yards and 3 touchdowns, all 3 of Tyler Tettleton's touchdowns. Tettleton was 22 of 32 for 306 and 3 touchdowns.
What was this guy's name? The receiver?
Dante Foster.
What number is he?
3.
I use him on
yes,
my
you do.
Dynasty.
Yes,
He's
you do.
really good.
Yes, you do. Another big boost for Ohio. Ohio got their first 100-yard rushing performance out of Bo Blankenship. He had 20 carries for 173 yards, and for the first time all year, he's gotten over 100 yards. So that's another huge thing. Ohio got 7 sacks on Saturday too, which is, again, they're going to have to do that on Tuesday against Buffalo.
Right. So everything going into the bye week is looking really good, and like you said, a really pivotal matchup with Buffalo to get into that MAC championship game. To have the right to play in Northern Illinois, most likely. And try to contain Jordan Lynch.
Now, we've seen Buffalo before, though, BJ.
Right.
They played Ohio State in the opener, and if I'm not mistaken, it was 40-20.
Yeah, 40-20.
It wasn't a blowout, they kept it close.
Yeah.
It got away from them at the end.
In the first half, they really took it to them, and then really just pulled their foot off the gas.
Right.
Ohio State came out firing in that game, going for 2 on their first 2 touchdowns.
But I'm saying they kept it close in that game.
Right. They definitely showed they were a good team.
Yeah. Ohio has to be ready to play.
Oh yeah.
And is this Ohio's first Tuesday game of the season?
This is the
I know
first
you said
Tuesday
it's the norm in the MAC.
It's the midweek games in the MAC.
Still, playing on a Tuesday is something. I don't know if come on. It's
not
normal in the MAC.
It's not what you're used to playing.
But you got to be ready.
But the positive of this is that they're going to have all this week to get ready for it. It's not like they're going to be on a short week.
Right.
And their only other loss this year was to Baylor, who's currently number 6 in the BCS.
Yeah. Their first Buffalo's first 2 games were at Ohio State and at Baylor.
Okay, they had a close game against Stony Brook that you don't really want to see, a 5 overtime matchup. They won 26-23, but since then they beat UConn 41-12. They beat Eastern Michigan 42-14. They beat Western Michigan 33-0. They beat UMass 32-3, and they beat Kent State 41-21. So they're really on a roll coming into this matchup.
Okay, so their losses were Baylor and Ohio State.
Baylor and at Ohio State.
Obviously, they're
not going to go to Buffalo, right?
If Baylor can go to Louisiana Monroe, why can't they go to Buffalo?
Right. I'm not disrespecting Buffalo. It's not what I mean.
I love the beautiful city of Buffalo.
Now, what So that means Buffalo is undefeated in MAC play.
But
Yes.
undefeated in MAC play.
Are they ahead of Ohio?
They
Are they in the
they're
different
they're in the
divisions?
same division. They're both in the
So
MAC
this is-
East. This is an
So if
absolutely
Ohio,
huge game.
if Ohio loses with their bad loss to Central Michigan,
Central Michigan.
that puts them out of the MAC champion. I mean, they're still going to go to a
For
bowl.
the most part.
For the most part,
So-
you're gonna need Buffalo and Bowling Green to both really drop.
Because
And
yeah,
they're
because
probably
Buffalo's not
not
going.
going
Okay,
to.
so I thought that's what it was. I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure. Yeah, that's Ohio. I mean, but this is the games you want to play.
These
though.
are the games that you want to play.
If you're the seniors, this is where you leave your legacy.
Yep.
I mean,
I mean, it's gonna
Oof.
be a good one. The last time Ohio went to Buffalo, they got beat.
yeah. I'll
So
definitely
I mean,
be watching.
it ought to be a really good game.
Yeah.
If you get the chance, tune in Tuesday night, 8:00, ESPN2. You're
Oh,
gonna
not even
love it.
ESPN.
We can't get that lucky.
Okay.
Big matchup in the Big Ten this week. Michigan's going to Michigan State, two one-loss teams. Michigan State has looked really good on the season. Like Mark and Antonio's staple, they're not blowing teams out. They're winning with defense, with an okay offense, really run heavy. Michigan has been
Up and down.
up
to
and
say the
down.
least.
Right. I mean, they blow out their first couple games, and then they almost lose to Akron. Then they almost lose to UConn. And then they really kind of get back on track, only to lose to Penn State in quadruple overtime. And then if they didn't have any offense, they would have lost last week to Indiana because they gave up 47 points. They were just lucky enough to score 60.
That was a
Not lucky.
That was a wild game.
That
Not
was
lucky enough to score
unbelievable.
63 because you have to be good to score 63. But if you know what I mean, if they don't
Yeah.
have any offense, they get blown out.
Yeah,
in
but
that
I
game.
tell you, in that game though, Indiana's quarterback left the game because he had hurt his hand. And the next play, the backup quarterback underthrew a wide open receiver that would have scored. And
Yeah.
I mean, so they.
You're talking
I'll
about
say
plays that
say
change-
luck. I'll say it. They got. I mean, they came up with the interception and then they came up with another turnover. But they got lucky that because that quarterback was dealing and he had that guy beat. The receiver had that guy beat by 3 steps and severely underthrew that ball. I don't know. It's hard to say, I guess, what you're saying, B, with Michigan being so inconsistent on a year. But it seems like with decent teams,
They don't.
I mean, especially it's at Michigan State, and that's a tough
The-
place to win.
The biggest thing will be, I mean, Michigan couldn't stop a wet paper bag on offense. Their defense is just awful.
I mean, Michigan
but-
State's going to run the ball, so
Right. So the key for Michigan State is they have to score. They have to score, and then they have to contain Devin Gardner. Devin Gardner has been solid on the year, but he's thrown 10 interceptions. He's very turnover prone. He's very talented, but he's always prone to a turnover because he just isn't very careful with the ball. So, I mean, Michigan State needs to force turnovers, need to let the defense win this game, and just kind of ride the offense too.
I mean, I always enjoyed watching the Michigan State
Mhm.
games because I always loved the physicality of
Yes.
the games.
Mhm.
These two teams do not like each other at all. And they really just wait to get at each other. I mean, Michigan, obviously the only game that's bigger for Michigan on a year is Ohio State. For Michigan State, this is the biggest game that they play all year. I mean, with maybe the exception of Notre Dame. But
Yeah.
you could argue that
I mean,
Michigan's
because
bigger.
I would say Michigan's bigger.
Michigan's
right.
I
and
would
they-
say Michigan's probably bigger.
Absolutely, and they didn't play Ohio State this year. That's always a
Yeah,
big game.
that's
for them.
always a
Not-
big
I
game.
mean, it's not. I still don't think it's Michigan State level, but
Yeah.
you know,
It's a big
Michigan's-
game for Michigan State.
Yeah.
It's a big game for Ohio State too. I mean,
Right.
they don't like each other.
No.
And do you think time of possession will be key for Michigan State? Because you know they like to run the ball. And I mean, we know a way to slow down an offense is not having it on the field. So if Michigan State can control the time of possession, get those 6, 7, 8, 9 minute drives, then they don't have to deal with Devin Gardner.
Well, I don't think Michigan's defense is good enough to even stay on the field that long.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I think Michigan State could very easily
Right.
just go and run straight through them for 80-something yard touchdowns every play.
Right, but I'm saying I don't know if I feel comfortable with Michigan State in a shootout.
Yeah.
No.
That's
I mean, you don't want that, obviously, but I'm just saying that's something
I-
that can.
yeah.
It's either going to go that way. It's going to end up being a Michigan State kind of game, or a Michigan score
14,
70
10,
points
yeah,
kind of game.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of those two extremes.
Predictions on it, Ian?
I like Michigan State in this one.
Okay.
I'm going to take Michigan State on this one for two reasons. One, I just think that they're more well suited to win this kind of game. I expect it to be the more physical kind of game. And second off, I cannot bring myself to pick Michigan ever in my life, ever. I'm going to take Michigan State in this one.
Good point.
I'm going to take this Michigan State in this one 24-14.
Okay, I'm going to take the Spartans as well. Like you said, Ohio State won't see them in the regular season, but they could see them in the Big Ten championship game. This is the game that's most likely going to decide that conference. Michigan they're both undefeated in conference, so this one will most likely decide it. I'm going to go with Michigan State with a 17-13.
That's a classic.
That's a game.
Well, I think I like Michigan State 24-21.
Last second field goal.
Last second field goal by Michigan State because I just think Michigan State's the better
Those
team
are all.
right now.
That's always how those games go too.
Yeah.
I love those games.
Let's move on to another Big 12 matchup. Oklahoma State, ranked 18th, going to Texas Tech, the number 15 team in the country. Texas Tech coming off their first loss of the season to Oklahoma. They were really in that game and then lost it late. Oklahoma State only has one loss on the season, that really bad loss to WVU. And WVU is making that loss look worse each week.
Yeah.
What do you expect to see this week in Texas?
It's gonna be a good matchup. I watched some of the Oklahoma State game last week, and if they had a quarterback, it seems like, because they can't decide between the.
Will they take Brandon Whedon back?
I think
I'll give him to him.
I think he's way past his eligibility. But what?
He's way past his eligibility in the NFL too.
Yeah.
But
Hey, we'll get to that.
yeah.
Well, actually,
I'm not gonna talk about him this week.
because he didn't play.
Yay!
Well, let's back to Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. Oklahoma State, they have a good offense. They have J.W. Walsh and I can't think of the other quarterback who they went with, but there was kind
back
of
and forth.
Yeah, they're really back and forth, and that's what kind of kills them because you can't develop a chemistry between your quarterbacks with your receivers.
If you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterback.
Well, that's not always the case,
Not
but
always
in this case it is because they can't they don't work well together.
And you always think Oklahoma State has always kind of been, under Mike Gundy at least, the kind of gunslinging, air it out, throw the ball all over the place kind of offense. And that's and you can tell that that's kind of what they're trying to keep doing.
They just don't have a quarterback, I think, who can do that right now. But I want to focus more on Texas Tech. They looked good against Oklahoma. They didn't win. And I know they were ranked higher, but I still think it would have been an upset had they gone into Norman and beat Oklahoma because they only have that one loss on the year to Texas.
Yeah.
And that's a rivalry game and anything goes.
Mm-hmm.
So they impressed me under first-year head coach
Cliff Kingsbury
with the sunglasses.
Yeah.
I think they're a program on the rise, and I think at home, I think Texas Tech wins this one. Not pretty easily. I think it'll be probably a one-possession game, but I think they found a way to win.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Texas Tech as well. I'm going to go with the 34-27 score. Really just kind of a Big 12 matchup. Little bit of defense, but not much. More offense than defense. So I'm going to go with the 34-27 score. I say the Red Raiders win this week.
You know what? I'll play devil's advocate here. I'm going to take Oklahoma State. I'll take Oklahoma State in this one. I love what Cliff Kingsbury has done with Texas Tech. I'm just gonna trust my gut here and say Oklahoma State finds a way to pull it out on the road. I'll take them. Give me 35-24.
Yeah, and the other quarterback's name is Clint Chelf.
That's it's a beautiful name.
That's a quarterback's name.
His parents were big fans of him.
Yeah, and I tell you what, he really didn't look all that impressive against a so-so Iowa State team. He was 10 of 26 for 78 yards, a touchdown, and interception. The real Desmond Rowland, the running back, 28 rushes, 219 yards, and 4 touchdowns. When you think of Oklahoma State, Ian, you're right. You think of the gunslinging, the Justin Blackman, the classic receiver, good quarterback, but their strength really is the run this year.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you run for 200 plus yards and 4 touchdowns, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a good game.
Although I will say, Texas Tech is not Iowa State.
True. So, well, that'll be interesting to see. But I think Ian's gonna be wrong.
By far the biggest matchup in college football this week.
I disagree. But
What would be the bigger matchup in your opinion?
I think Michigan State's gonna be a better. I'm
saying
matchup
implications.
Implications.
Two undefeated ACC teams. Miami's going into Florida State. If Florida State continues their trend, it's gonna be ugly. They've just they might not be ranked number one, but as far as impressing in the eye test, they have by far been the best team in the country this year. Jameis Winston has exceeded all expectations as a freshman. Their defense is just nasty. They're outscoring teams 52-11. That includes at least two top 25 teams on the schedule that I can think of off the top of my head. They've just been dominant. And I don't think anyone in the ACC can compete with them. Miami's been good, but they've come close to getting upset the past couple of weeks. They narrowly beat Wake Forest last week, 24-21. There was a 27-23 score the week before that against North Carolina. They have to play better against Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to play their best game of the year. They've looked good, but they're going to have to look great if they're going to beat Florida State at Florida State.
Do you remember when Florida State played Maryland and beat them 63?
63-0.
Yeah. This could resemble that kind of thing. I'm not being smart. Miami somehow has creeped into the top 10. I don't know how, because they're just not
Stephen
that.
Morris is really good. He's their senior quarterback.
I know this, but they have not looked good all year, in my opinion. This is who they've beaten: Florida Atlantic, 34-6. Not impressive. They did play Florida at home and beat them 21-16.
That's when Florida was healthy.
Right, but look at Florida. They haven't really impressed. I mean, I know they were healthy that game, but still. I mean, then they beat Savannah State 77-7. Big whoop. South Florida 49-21. Okay, that's a little better. Georgia Tech 45-30. And then the last 2 weeks at UNC, it took a 90-yard drive to win. They won 27-23. Wake Forest 24-21.
They were losing a majority of that game.
I just don't. They're not at the level. Florida State is easily can be argued as a top team in the nation. I mean, Alabama's obviously for good reasons they're number one, but they're a number two. I think they've looked better than Oregon this year because I believe Oregon. This was the first time they played somebody. They played UCLA, and they really didn't get clicking until the second, the late third and into the fourth quarter. But I mean, people and I know Miami's one of those schools you either you love them or you hate them. There's no in between on Miami. And a lot of the Miami fans want to take shots at Ohio State, and I've seen them on social media and in other places talking to Florida or Miami fans, and they say, "Oh, how long is Ohio State going to be in that number 4 spot when they look this? They don't even look good in the Big Ten. Miami has no room to talk.
No.
They have not had an impressive victory over a D1 school this year. I mean, look, Ohio State 63-14 against a D1 school in Penn State. I mean, they beat Wisconsin this year. Ohio State beat Wisconsin this year, and that one is looking better and better as Wisconsin gets good because they really should only have one loss on the year.
Take away the botch call.
So I mean, and it's at Florida State. I mean, unless Florida State has that classic game they have every year where they just lose for no reason, I think Florida State rolls in this one 56-14. I don't think it's going to be close.
Well, since you partially answered the question that I'm going to ask, the spread this week opened up at 21 for Florida State.
And with good
I would
reason.
I would take the points.
I predicted Florida State to go to the national title game this year.
You're looking smart for it because they have looked
And
impressive.
I'm going to keep on rolling with it. I don't see Florida State losing this game. I see Florida State hanging 70 on
I
Miami.
can see it.
I
Miami's
could see
defense
that.
isn't good.
I see Florida State potentially hanging 70 on
Right.
Miami.
It took a monster effort from Duke Johnson, the Miami's running back, who basically on that last drive against Wake Forest, of the 77 yards they went, he had 45 of them. So it took. I mean, you're not going to run the ball against Florida State like that.
You're
I mean,
not going to do much of anything.
No, I mean
against Florida
Stephen.
State.
I know Stephen Morris. I mean, he looked good at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
He's still he's athletic. There's no question. He's an athletic quarterback. He can make plays with his feet. He can make the throws, but his mechanics gets the better of him sometimes. I mean,
raw talent.
yeah. I mean, there's talent there, but
Which is ironic because he's been there for how many years
Yes.
now? It seems
He's
like
a senior.
8.
He's a
Right.
senior.
It
right
feels
here.
like he's been there for 8
right.
years.
And I think this is the win that finally puts Florida State number 2 in the BCS. I mean, Oregon and Florida State have been flip-flopping these first 2 weeks, but I think they beat ranked top 10 Miami team. I think that puts them enough points. And if they do it, what we're thinking,
Yeah.
I mean, I think you'll end up seeing Florida State, Alabama in the national championship game, and I think you're going to see one heck of a Rose Bowl game in Oregon and Ohio State. So
You could potentially have 2 bowls right there with undefeated teams.
Yeah.
4 teams undefeated.
and this is
How great would it be if this was the year that the 4-team playoff was implemented?
It would be awesome as a fan, as an Ohio State fan.
It'd be
nervous
scary.
I'd be scared as
because I don't. Well, we already talked about them, but I just don't think their defense is at the level yet of these other schools. But yes, that would be great. If
that
this
would
was
be
the year.
fantastic.
I mean, and then you still have some one-loss teams. I mean, Oklahoma's a one-loss. I mean,
Mhm.
there's teams there that would make a great playoff. And can you imagine if you're Alabama having to beat Florida State? I mean, you play Florida State, and then you got to go and play Oregon. You just know the best team is probably going to win now with this new
And
system.
that
And that's the
I
way it
can't
should-
wait for it.
That's another discussion
Let's
for
move
another
on
day.
to football where they actually settle it on the field and not with computers. The NFL. AFC North matchup this week. The Ravens going to Cleveland. Cleveland coming off another loss. They look
good.
very impressive against an 8-0 Chiefs team.
There's
though.
no shame in losing by
No,
6
and-
points
and
in Arrowhead. No
And
shame.
Jason Campbell seemed to really revitalize that team. Anyone but Brandon Whedon just seems to really give them some momentum. The Ravens haven't looked so impressive this year. They're coming off a bye week this week. Last time you saw them, they were losing to the Steelers, and that loss is looking not very good now. But it was a rivalry game. So what do you expect to see this week? Do you expect to see the Browns continue to improve with Jason Campbell?
I'm just gonna say this. I think the Chiefs are probably the worst 8-0 team I've seen because let's talk about it.
They're very flimsy.
Who have they played? They have not beat a team with a winning record in this 8-0
No,
run.
and that you always see a team like that who goes 2-14, and then they open up the next season with a really good run, but they're playing a lot of losing teams.
Yeah. I mean, that's a completely different discussion in and
Right.
of itself. But what I saw on Sunday was encouraging to me as a fan.
Mhm.
I saw a lot of things that were concerns to me get better. Jason Campbell, 22 of 36 for 293 yards and 3 touchdowns. Defensive adjustments. Finally, some defensive adjustments. Cleveland gave up 20 points in the first half and then only gave up 3 the entire second half. That was absolutely huge. Now, not everything was perfect because obviously everyone's going to talk about Devon Best, 4 drops, a fumble on a muff punt that really kind of changed the whole complexion of the game and really kind of killed any momentum that Cleveland had. Again, no ground game for this team. No ground game offensively for this team. They only had 57 yards on 13 carries as a team. You can't win like that in the NFL. And then penalties, 9 penalties for 70 yards for Cleveland. Those things are what's going to kill teams in games in the NFL. Now they have a really, really good chance to beat Baltimore. I think Baltimore is a very beatable team right now.
Absolutely.
But they're going to have to capitalize on the opportunities that come up in the game. They're going to have to cut down on the penalties. They're going to have to play fundamental football, and they got to get something going on the ground if they're going to have any sort of chance to do it. But Jason Campbell and Josh Gordon even had another really good game. And thank you, Cleveland, for not trading Josh Gordon today.
Yes.
Thank you, Cleveland. Thank you, Cleveland. Thank you, Cleveland. Josh Gordon had 5 catches for 132 yards and a touchdown. That's another huge day for
And
him.
you know I saw a stat when they were going through the trade deadline on him. He's second in the league in terms of average yards per catch.
Mm-hmm.
You need a playmaker like that.
Yeah.
And you need a quarterback that can get him the ball. And when you do have a quarterback that can get him the ball, you see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, you go over 100 yards on only 5 catches.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
impressive.
he's been unbelievable.
And Ian, let me throw some numbers out for you. Jason Campbell career numbers: 14,981 career passing yards, 78 touchdowns to 52 interceptions. I mean, the interception is a little high.
Yeah.
He has completed 60%, almost 61% of his passes for his career. Where was this guy at, and why has it taken them so long for them to play him? I understand the Brandon Hoyer thing, and then to be honest, I mean, I think Campbell could have won those games Hoyer won. I mean,
Probably.
I mean, Hoyer, he was looking good. I mean, it looked like he kind of finally got the career start he wanted after, so many years just bouncing around as a backup. But for a veteran like Jason Campbell, who, in my opinion, I've always been a fan of Campbell. I felt like in Washington and Oakland, he was always bouncing around with coordinators.
Yeah.
He never really got
in Washington, I feel like he was drafted in the first round, obviously.
And you put those high expectations.
Right, there
because
was so
of it.
high expectations on him, but there's literally nothing around him. Now that he's in Cleveland, and I never thought I would be complimenting Cleveland like this, there's weapons around him for him to throw to. So he's gonna look good.
He had a good game against a good Chiefs defense. Their offense
very
not
good
so
Chiefs
good.
defense.
The Chiefs really stepped out early, shutting Cleveland down 2-3 and outs. They jump out 14-0.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, after that point, they put 9 points up on the board, and Cleveland scores 17. So I mean, after that really quick start, Cleveland had some really nice adjustments against the last undefeated team in the league.
And I mean, you got to think, with Brandon Weeden in and Cleveland goes down 14-0, you've just got that feeling like, oh, here we go, blowout time. And then now you put Jason Campbell in there, and you don't feel like that. You feel like, okay, it happened. Let's get back into this game. And you saw that happen. I think as a team, you saw that happen. This team rallied around him, and that was huge. He injected a burst of confidence into this team.
Right, and just to throw out real quick, Campbell was 22 of 36. If you do the math, that comes out to 61% of his passes, which is his career number. 293 yards and 2 scores. The key there, he didn't turn the ball over like Weeden would have.
Yeah.
In some fashion, and he put his team in a position to win. They just kind of dug themselves too big of a hole. And when you go down 14-0 to Kansas City and Arrowhead, it's really tough. I mean, in a division still where it is so weak, Cleveland being 3-5, they're still not out of it for the wild card. I think the Bengals are going to win the division by default.
Yeah, they're slowly kind of taking it.
But that second wild card spot, if Campbell can play consistent like he did, and you're right, if Cleveland's the defense kind of appeared back again. They gave up 23 points.
But they only gave up 3 points the entire second half of that game.
So they kind of rediscovered themselves because they were
I didn't think I'd be saying this. Huge kudos to Ray Horton and the defensive staff for those halftime adjustments that really shut down that Kansas City offense.
They were kind of defense.
Because, I mean, you got to even think about it. They didn't let Jamal Charles beat
No.
him. They didn't let Dexter McCluster beat him. They didn't let Dwayne Bowe beat him.
Alex Smith wasn't going to.
Alex Smith wasn't going to beat him.
So
I mean, they
they
really,
adjusted.
they
and it
were
was,
in the game, and as
Right.
a Browns fan, what more can you ask for
And I tell
than
you
for them
what,
to be in the game?
And I tell you what, Ian, if they stay competitive and maybe they don't win, 8 or 9 games this year, and they get another good draft pick with the one they already got for Richardson,
Mhm.
they
They're
could,
really shaping up for next season.
I
next
mean-
season and years to come. I know Cleveland fans don't want to hear next year, but I mean they finally have stability in this organization, and honestly, I think they might go out and get a first round a draft pick with a quarterback with one of their.
I think that's pretty much what everyone is
but
expecting.
I'm telling you though, Jason Campbell.
The
If he
only
continues to
problem
play-
with Jason Campbell is he's 31 years
Right,
old.
but what
no,
I'm
but
saying,
if you have
though,
him there to
you
really
have
just
him
kind
there.
of
Yeah.
and he showed he was competitive. Like I said, I don't know why it took them so long for him to get a shot. And I understand he's 31, but you do the whole Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers scenario. You bring in whoever you want to bring in, whether it be Johnny Football, Teddy Bridgewater, whatever quarterback you're bringing in. You sit him for a year or two, let him learn under Campbell, and really know the offense. He comes out, and then Cleveland is relevant again, which I never thought I'd say that because in the last 5 or 6, even 10 years, really, they seem like they've had no direction. But it's pretty clear this year they're signing players, they're in it.
Yeah, I really feel like this is the management team that's going to turn it around. I mean, when you're a fan of like the Browns organization,
And
you
as
have
a
to go-
Steeler fan, BJ, this is what I like to see because now this brings back the rivalry.
right?
I mean, it's really shifted to Steelers, Ravens, Steelers, Cincinnati because it just assumed that Pittsburgh's going to beat Cleveland both times they play. Now, this year, it's up for grabs, and in the next coming years, I hope this rivalry gets back to where it was.
Okay, let's move on to the other half or let's pick this game real quick.
Give me the Browns. I'll take the Browns this week. Give me 23-20.
Okay, I'm going to take the Ravens. I think it'll be a close, competitive game. Give me the Ravens 20-17.
And Cleveland. Ray Rice has been inefficient all year. Flacco looked better in the second half against Pittsburgh, but I mean Pittsburgh's defense. I think Cleveland has a better defense than Pittsburgh. Still never thought I'd say that either. I think I like Cleveland in this one, but it's going to be a weirdish game. It's going to be like 19-12 or something, it's going to be. There's not going to be a lot of touchdowns, but it's going to be some field goals, and it's going to be a classic AFC North kind of game.
Okay, let's move on to the Steelers at the Patriots. The Steelers coming off a dismal loss to the
That's
Raiders.
an understatement.
It just feels like every time. I mean, they do every time they go out to Oakland, they lose. It doesn't. I mean, the Steelers could be 15-0, and the Raiders could be 0-15, and they would lose. But I mean, obviously, this week it was more of like a matchup thing than just playing at Oakland. I mean, when you let Terrell Pryor run for 93 yards for a touchdown on their first possession. First play, you're down 7-0. Okay, that's fine. You're not going to let that happen again. I mean, it's not fine, and you shouldn't let that happen. But, okay, that's fine. You're down 7-0. Now you know what their game plan is. Okay? Now Zoltan Mesko has his punt blocked. Now you're down 14-0. Really? To Oakland, you're down 14-0 already? So, I mean, they're really just trying to dig themselves out the whole time. Their effort came up short. The defense really made some good halftime adjustments. Oakland didn't score in the second half, did they?
No, they scored 21 points in
the first half. Right.
But
it was 21-3.
This is the thing, though, BJ. Oakland played Jim Tressel football to the next level in the second half. I will credit the Steeler defense because after that play of the 93 yards, they played better. They forced 3 turnovers. They had probably 3 or 4 sacks against Pryor.
And the Raiders' second touchdown was on a very short field.
Right,
it was like
because
a
of the block
35-yard field.
But what concerned me wasn't the offensive line at this point, because at this point I'm over the offensive line. I know they're bad. Injuries keep happening, so they're getting even worse.
They were one injury away from having to put like a tight end or someone on the line.
they played a guard named Cody Wallace. I have no idea who that is.
I can tell you who that is. I get a text every Sunday about half an hour before the game.
Okay.
It says Steelers inactives. Cody Wallace's name has been on that list every week except this one.
And
So now, from practice squad
I mean, and
to
honestly,
trying to block for Big Ben.
Honestly, he did not play that bad.
He
I mean,
really didn't.
and that's what's sad. This is what. I'll give Ian a second here.
Go for it.
This is what concerns me about the Steelers. I mean, you can, first of all, I think at this point the Browns general management has completely outmanaged the Steelers. They kept a guy in Zoltan Mesko who was averaging about 33 yards a punt for about 6 weeks.
7 weeks.
Well, 7 weeks because it was
8 weeks during the bye week.
Yeah, I mean 8 weeks on 33 yards. I know high school punters who kick farther than that.
Dalton Conroy.
I mean, but that's a whole nother issue in itself because you can't change field position at all. And when you're down, you're punting from your 20-yard line, and you give them the ball at midfield, you're not going to win games like this. Mm-hmm. This game fell on, and I hate to say this fell on Ben Roethlisberger's horrible time management. I mean, what coaching staff? I mean, the time management was so bad in this game. They're going down at the end of the first half, and they're taking their time like they have all day. They didn't call their timeouts. They lost 2 of their timeouts because of challenges.
One of their time, they won the first challenge.
Okay, so they lost the timeout to a challenge that really, it could have went either way. And since it was ruled on the field, he touched it. It was going to stay that way because it was so close. Whatever, fine. But they didn't. There was no sense of urgency at all. I mean, there was 20 seconds left, and instead of taking a shot in the end zone, they don't. And then you assume Sean Sweesham's going to come out and hit the 33-yard field goal or 34-yarder, which he doesn't.
I know where to place the blame for Sean Sweesham.
It was not Zoltan Mesko's fault.
No, it was not Mesko's fault. I was working during the game. And I was in the car for pizza deliveries.
Right, living the dream.
And right, I mean, I'm just kind of a rock star kind of guy, living the dream. But right after his first field goal that he made, Bill Hillgrove and Tunch Ilkin and Craig Wolfley, don't you just kind of assume at this point everything that he kicks is going right through the goalpost? I don't mean to jinx him. Obviously that's not why he missed those field goals.
Could be a reason.
But you should not let the game, when you're playing a bad Oakland team, and this is a bad Steelers team, but when you're playing a bad Oakland team, you do not let the game come down to special teams, and they did. If you add up all the points that came down the special teams, you got the touchdown off the block punt, off the next drive from a short field, and 6 points left on the board from missed field goals. There's 13 points. You only lost by 3.
Okay, and I understand Sweesham missed those 2 short kicks. I'm not even placing the blame on him for this game. Because the offense should have been able to score on a bad Oakland defense.
I'll throw my one bit of information in this.
I'm listening.
35 rushing yards.
Yeah,
there you
that's
go.
It. I mean,
35
you're
rushing
you're
yards.
not going to beat anyone.
Okay, and right at the end of the game, they couldn't establish the run because the line could not block from Bell.
Roethlisberger had to throw the ball 45 times.
And honestly, Ian, it should have been enough. And and I understand that they go down. They're at the 7-yard line. They have to go 90-something yards in 4 minutes just to get within 3 points. Mm-hmm. They act like they had 10 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't. They ran no huddle, but it wasn't. And then they get down to about the 20-ish yard line, and the time clock's about to expire because for some reason, after they get the first down, they can't get the play off. They have to waste a timeout. Okay, why not take the 5-yard penalty? You were down 11 points. You needed a field goal and a touchdown and an extra point. You take
2-point conversion.
Or 2-point conversion. I'm sorry. You take the 5-yard penalty. Say you don't score on a drive. You kick the field goal, you're down 8 points. There's probably a minute 50 left on the clock with 3 timeouts. You get the ball back with about a minute 30, and then you could go down and score on a horrible Oakland team. And this is the last thing I'm going to say about this. Antonio Brown, if you want to get the big money and you want to say you're the number one guy,
Act like it.
you better start catching the football. 2 huge drops. 3rd and 15. You don't even expect at this point, because the Steelers are so bad, you don't expect a 3rd and 15. Usually in the past, I'm like, okay,
hits him right in the hands.
Ben's going to scramble, do something. He's going to make it happen. Ben throws a strike right to him on the sideline. He gets bumped, drops the ball completely. Should have caught that ball, extended the drive. Okay, the game's over for some reason. No, you're still in the game because Oakland is running the ball up the middle 3 plays and punting the ball. The next drive, you get the ball back. And this is when you're down 11 with about 6 minutes left. Okay, it's a 3rd down conversion, 3rd and 2. If we don't get it here, I know Sweesham's had a rough day, but he's gonna make up for it. 6 minutes left, down 8. I'll take that against Oakland. No, Antonio Brown catches the ball, drops it into the defender's hands for an interception. That is unacceptable for a number 1 wide receiver. It was the same thing that Mike Wallace did, and he didn't, and that's why he didn't get the big money contract, because I think they thought Mike Wallace was too inconsistent. And here they give it to Brown, and he's had fumbles, he's had drops, and I'm sick of it.
Okay, Cody, I got a question to pose for you.
Okay.
Say that this season continues to just be awful.
Okay.
Say they end up. Let's say they go 4-12. They win 2 more games, and I could see that realistically happening.
5-11, 4. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Say they have a top 10 pick. Do you go with the Kansas City Chiefs model of you just kind of retool a couple things, add it in, you go from 2-14 to an 8-0 start, or do you go with the Colts approach of just completely rebuilding with young players and still being successful?
No, see, we are rebuilding with young players. But we're not there yet. I will not. I'm telling you, I understand where you're going with this, but I still think Ben has about 4 or 5 good years left.
That was my next
I know, but they're wasting his prime. I think Ben now has come into his prime and is in his prime. But Ian, listen, I know you're doing this, but think about it. Think of the weapons Ben used to have. He used to have a good offensive line, Jerome Bettis, Hines Ward. I mean, he had the players. Now that I think he's gotten a little more mature in his life off the field as well as on the field, they surround him with a makeshift offensive line. I mean, the receivers are there when they're consistent. But to answer your question, BJ, if they go 4-11, 4-12, 5-11-ish, I know this isn't the Rooney way, but I think you part ways with Mike Tomlin.
I think
because he's shown, first of all, he comes in and he wins the Super Bowl. Those were Bill Cowher's players. They were. I'm sorry, you didn't draft any of them. You came into a good situation. You won the Super Bowl with Cowher's players. The next year, you don't make the playoffs. 2009, don't make the playoffs. The next year, you go to the Super Bowl, lose to the Packers. Okay, he's a good coach. The next year,
12-4, upset in Denver.
Upset in Denver. Next year, doesn't make the playoffs. I understand there were rough years with Cowher, but he had a lot more better years than he did rough years. And I'm sorry. I mean, I think you're right, BJ. I think there's an overhaul that needs to happen. I think
Mike Tomlin, I think that he's overdone. His act is tired. The standard is the standard. No, it's not. When you're losing, what's the standard? I saw a couple Pittsburgh guys today. The standard has become mediocrity.
Pretty much.
So if you're saying the standard is the standard in some vague statement, the standard better be good if that's the standard.
And I want to see him place blame on players. I wanted him, after the press conference, to go up there, and when they're sitting there talking, what happened? Well, Sweesham's supposed to hit his field goals. He missed them. Antonio Brown's supposed to catch the ball. He dropped them, and that's unacceptable.
But I think
the offensive line should have blocked. They didn't. He doesn't put blame on people.
I think he's being outcoached by the other team
horrible.
too.
They can't.
But I'll just
Ugh.
Getting back to what you were initially talking about with Tomlin and the players and all that
And
stuff.
it,
Now, again, that's not entirely Tomlin though. That's front office guys.
I
That's
get that.
general management.
Right,
This is an entire
I get
organizational
that.
problem.
Right, I get that, Ian. But you cannot tell me Mike Tomlin's not in that draft room helping decide.
Oh, I understand.
Who,
I know that.
But back to BJ's original question: what do you do in the draft this year? What goes? First of all, if Todd Haley's still the offensive coordinator, there's something wrong. I had this discussion.
Okay.
Hold on, I know we got to move on, but I just want to throw this
No,
out
that's
there.
fine. Go ahead.
I know.
Go.
I just want to throw this
Go.
out here real quick. We were having a discussion, my dad and I at dinner the other day about the offensive coordinator. What you do? I said you have to fire Todd Haley. I'm sorry, maybe he's a nice guy, whatever.
No, he's an
not a nice guy.
asshole. He's an asshole.
But that's what I hear. But whatever. You have to go with it. You have to part ways with him. This is what you need to do when you're hiring your new offensive coordinator. You have to take the approach the the Chicago Bears took when they were interviewing for their head coach and offensive coordinator. They had Jay Cutler interview those people, and his opinion mattered. When you have a franchise quarterback, he has to be.
And Ben Roethlisberger is on another level than Jay Cutler.
I know, and that's
what I'm saying. You're right.
So you have to give a coordinator that's going to fit Roethlisberger's style and is going to be on the same page. Because whatever they want to say, they are not on the same page. They hate each other. But in the draft, this is what they need to do. They need offensive tackles.
Yeah, I was gonna say
their first 2 picks need to be offensive tackles because they have a Pro Bowl center. DeCastro is a good guard, and I'll take Ramon Foster. He's not the best, but he's all right.
But
I mean, the tackle play has been.
I really
horrible.
think it's nice that going into this year, knowing that your offensive line it probably isn't going to be very good. I think it's nice that they wasted a 4th round pick on Landry Jones, who's going to be inactive all 16 games. And who's never going to see the field in Pittsburgh, and who shouldn't see the field in Pittsburgh.
I mean, the mantra of the Pittsburgh Steelers through my entire lifetime has been run the football.
And you can't with this.
You can't. You cannot do it.
You cannot expect Le'Veon Bell to be Barry Sanders.
Here's a question for you: is Le'Veon Bell the franchise running back?
Yes.
What he showed against Baltimore.
When he has protection.
And like I said, you cannot expect him to be Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders probably would have been the all-time leading rusher had he had a decent line. He made plays. He was just special. I think Le'Veon Bell is special, but
in a different way.
I guarantee Adrian Peterson wouldn't be as good as he would with the Steelers' offensive line.
I'm impressed with Bell. I like his running style. He's only
a rookie. He's only going to get better.
And what I like most about him is he always falls forward.
And he doesn't dance around.
No.
We got to move on.
We have to move
okay,
on.
real quick, Ian. How bad does Pittsburgh lose in Foxborough?
14 points.
BJ.
Okay. The Patriots haven't been very good too. No,
the
Patriots are gonna win.
Okay.
But they haven't looked very good either. I think the Steelers, like they have all season, are gonna play a very winnable game. Lose it at the end because that's what they're doing this year. I like the Patriots in this game 24-17.
The Pittsburgh Steelers, when they were good,
got their asses kicked by the
have
Patriots.
never beaten Tom Brady in Foxborough. And you're gonna tell me
the Cleveland Browns beat Tom Brady in Foxborough.
I know. This is what I'm saying. When they were winning Super Bowls in the playoffs, they couldn't beat New England in New England. It's not going to continue now. I'm with BJ. I think Pittsburgh shoots themselves in the foot somehow. I'm going to say 21-17 New England because they haven't looked all that great. Another matchup in the NFL and NFC North matchup. The Chicago Bears go to the Green Bay Packers. Ian, opening thoughts?
One of my favorite games every single year. I love Bears-Packers.
Yeah.
Just, again, for the same reason I love the Michigan State game. Physicality, hatred. These two teams hate each other. There's the tradition. These are two of the most storied franchises in the league. And it's always a really, really good game. I always love watching these games. And I expect another really, really good game Sunday. Or Monday. It's Monday night.
Yeah, it's a Monday
night.
I think it'll be a good game, but I like the Packers in this one. They're just better all around, but offensively they're just better. Aaron Rodgers, Jay Cutler. And that's what it comes
Cutler's
down
not
to.
even playing. He's
Oh,
injured.
you're
He's
right.
been out.
Injured.
He's going to be
Okay,
out.
Aaron Rodgers, Luke McCown. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's so. The Packers are such a different team with Eddie Lacy. When they can run the ball, they're scary good, and they're missing some of their top wideouts with Jacoby James Jones. I'm sorry, and Randall Cobb are out, and they're still putting up a ton of points. I mean, this is what makes you think. If I'm a Steelers fan, man, I can't believe we pass on Eddie Lacy because he's just been tearing it up.
Wouldn't he be doing that with the Pittsburgh
I don't know.
though?
Well, I don't know this, but I'm just saying he's looked impressive, and
Absolutely.
that pick is kind of like, man, we let one slip by, as it stands right now. But going back, the Bears without Cutler probably don't have a shot in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, Cutler he's had a better year with the new head coach and that new offensive style. I mean, it bodes good for Matt Forte, because I think he'll get more touches. And anytime you give Matt Forte more touches, I mean, you saw what he did last week. When Cutler went down, he scored 3 touchdowns.
I'll just say this. Chicago still has Brandon Marshall on that roster.
They do.
And Brandon Marshall is a game-changing wide receiver.
You just got to make sure you have a quarterback who can give him the ball, because you can see what happens when you have skilled players but you don't have a quarterback to give them the ball.
Brandon Marshall doesn't even have to be the deep threat because he's got the build. I think he can be an over-the-middle kind of guy. Those short, intermediate throws where he could really be an impactful player in this game.
Kind of on a different note, but still regarding Brandon Marshall, did you see Brandon Merriweather's comments about him?
Oh, wow.
Probably one of the best shots fired I've ever heard.
Oh my god!
And you know what though?
I mean,
Merriweather probably really shouldn't be.
No.
I'm just saying probably shouldn't be spending his time taking shots when he needs to learn how to
stay in the league.
Yeah. But that's a whole other subject.
I like the Pack in this game.
I think being at Lambeau, I think it'll be 35-25 maybe. I mean, it's not going to be a blowout because I think Chicago. It's a rivalry game.
But I think you'll see the Packers in control the entire time.
Right. So.
Let's move on to the NHL. The Penguins finally broke their 3-game losing streak last night. They beat the Carolina Hurricanes, the Stahl show. but it might have been pretty costly. Not in that game, but you heard the news of Rob Scuderi. He's going to be out a while with a broken ankle.
Yeah.
He's really kind of changed. He's really kind of been that piece that's anchored the defense this year.
But on a note like that, though, BJ, from what I was hearing from sources and stuff, and I don't know how true it is, they say in hockey, there's a better chance of a recovery to be back for the season with an ankle break than a high ankle sprain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know you don't want to see a player injured, but at least it was
a clean break and not a sprain.
Mm-hmm.
So you really see for them, they're deep defensively, but he was kind of that anchor. He was kind of like the veteran who really stayed to it. The other defensemen are good, but like a Chris Letang. I mean, he's a good defenseman, but he's a better forward. He's not as disciplined as a Rob Scuderi. Moving forward, do you see that as a big issue for the Penguins?
No, I don't see it as that big of an issue because Marc-Andre Fleury has just been so ridiculously good thus far. I mean, he's 8-2 with a 1.79 goal against average. I mean, that's
decent.
That's
decent.
That's far and away above decent. I want to throw this out here because I have to get my weekly shot at the Flyers in. Brooks Orpik has 5 points on the year. That is the same amount of points as Claude Giroux. Yes, good on you, Brooks Orpik. We love you. And I say this every week, and I'm going to keep saying it because he keeps proving me right. Sidney Crosby is the best player in the world. 20 points in 12 games.
I don't even think like some sports. I mean, you have the best player, and then you have maybe a 1A or 1B.
Yeah. No.
I don't think there's anyone within 5 spots of Crosby.
What a game from Jason Megna last night too. Unbelievable game from him last night. A goal and assist, 4 shots.
In his first game.
There
was an interesting picture going around on Twitter from the Penguins and Facebook and stuff like that. They showed Ollie Mata passing the rock to him.
Yeah.
Just another young talent coming up that was in the farm system.
Yeah.
And I mean, he did this. I mean, I know it was Carolina, and they're
Yeah.
not good.
This is the NHL.
Yes.
It's the NHL.
I mean, in his first game, he gets an assist. Okay, that's good for you. Then to get a goal.
He gets a goal.
And
And it was a really, really nice
Yes.
goal too.
I mean, I flipped between Monday Night
Mhm.
Football and this game, and I don't know if this. I mean, it's still early. Like I said, we judge Pittsburgh in April and
Yeah.
March, but Fleury's looked outstanding. What concerns me is the lack of goalie depth, though.
Yeah.
They had it with Vokoun.
Mhm.
They had a great system going. I can't even. What's the
Jeff Zatkoff.
Yeah.
Yes, he's just not ready for the NHL. It seems like yet. I mean, he in the 2 games that he has played, they've. I mean, 5 goals and then
Yeah.
6. I mean, 6 goals and then 5 goals. I mean, it's not good. I mean, I know the defense in those games weren't the best,
No.
but you can't give up that many goals.
I'm
That's what concerns me moving forward.
just gonna. I'll say this: Boston's been 4-1 in their last 5 games because I mean, obviously the
Let's look
Bruins
at
and the
the
Penguins.
game tomorrow.
Yeah.
Bruins and the Penguins. Boston's 4-1 in their last 5. During those games, they're averaging nearly 4 goals a game. I think Pittsburgh can win this game tomorrow night, and I expect Pittsburgh to win this game as long as Tuukka Rask doesn't play out of his absolute freaking
Like he did
mind,
in the
like he's been doing.
and,
Yeah, I mean, this is the first meeting for the team since the playoff series where Boston really took it to the
I had
Pens
the
in a
unfortunate
4-0 sweep.
experience of being at Game 2.
But
I'm sorry.
so I mean, you would think that the Penguins might have that edge to them, like
I think they will.
I think they will.
Like we want to kick your ass for what you did in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I really expect them to get out there,
and it's at home.
It's at home.
be aggressive.
Yeah.
I like them. I like them in a 5-2 game.
Okay.
I like a 3-2 game.
Yeah,
I don't think
Tuukka Rask is good.
Tuukka Rask is really, really
5
good.
goals, you're on fire.
Yeah, that's
Um,
ridiculous numbers.
Ian, I want to get to a point. Okay, we know the first line
Mhm.
is Crosby, Dupuis, Kunitz.
Yes.
Oh no, yes, I'm right. Okay, second line when healthy will probably be Neil, Malkin,
Jokinen.
Jokinen, because I mean Jokinen.
They want to keep
Or
you.
maybe
with-
even Bennett.
I mean they've been
Bennett.
talking.
Yeah.
Okay. So third line you have Sutter, Bennett. Do you keep Magna up here?
Absolutely.
And where does he fit? I guess what the
and
question
He's
is.
a fourth line.
While
Where-
you're
where-
talking about Manga, don't forget about Diagnosti,
Right,
the
right.
other young forward.
I'm just asking where, because obviously your first game of the year, you have 2 points, and you continue to play at that level or close to that level. They can't send you back down
No.
to Scranton. But I just want to get your opinion on where does he fit? with the team?
I think he's.
Is he eventually the winger?
Oh,
they've been looking for.
he's
for
eventually a
Crosby?
second or first line winger, but I mean, for the time being, he's a third or fourth line
because
guy.
because I don't
Because
know
I
if
think he had a great performance the other
Right.
night,
I mean,
but he's still trying to get used to the speed of the
Okay.
game. It's a completely different beat.
I mean, I guess too, what I'm saying is at the end of the year when he's been up here for a while, where do you see him maybe getting on that second line
Oh.
just to see?
I think because the Pens have been experimenting so much with that. Derek England has been playing wing for the
He
Penguins.
scored a goal.
I
on
mean,
that,
Derek
as a winger.
England has been playing wing for the Penguins. I mean, obviously, I think he's going to get to see some looks with the injuries that have happened to Neil and
But
Bennett
he
and
did.
all
He
that stuff.
scored a goal as a winger, Ian. But okay, because I just don't see, because obviously he's younger. I don't know if he fits the mold of a fourth line
Mhm.
kind of tough guy. So that's why I was kind of
Well, I mean, usually your third line is your grinding
Right,
kind of line,
right.
and your fourth line is just whatever you can kind of
right.
scrabble together.
But I'm just saying, in terms of our fourth line with Vitali,
Yeah.
Adams, and Glass, those are some tough guys.
Yeah.
That's what it just seems. I know what you're saying about normally your third line is. It seems our third line is can be a high scoring line
Yeah.
too. And I've kind of been impressed with Tanner Glass and Craig
Uh-huh.
Adams this year. Even Vitali,
Yeah.
they're scoring points every now and then, and that's really
That's
what
all you need from a fourth
Yeah.
line.
and that's what you really haven't been seeing
No.
really from the Penguins in the past. Is sometimes, but consistently not. I know we're only so many games into the season,
Mhm.
but I've really liked what I've seen with the Penguins, especially with all the injuries
Yeah.
and what can be with all this team. So
Okay, let's move on.
4-2. Penguins.
Okay.
Thanks for asking, B.
I thought
And
we
no,
did all that
Well,
already.
you didn't ask me.
Oh, okay.
And the fourth goal is going to be an empty netter. So really, Ian was going to
3-2.
right. Ian was right, but they're going to get a cheap goal.
I was looking at the standings this morning, and I saw something that I thought was really interesting. The Lightning and the Maple Leafs are tied in the new Atlantic Division, not the old Atlantic Division that the Penguins were in. We're tied atop the division. I thought that was pretty interesting. The Lightning were a team that really struggled last year. They're off to a hot 8-2 start. Stamkos is really looked good, and then the Maple Leafs. I mean, they kind of felt like a fluke last year getting in the playoffs, but I mean, they're really kind of proving their worth this year.
You can tell that these are two teams that are riding the play of their superstars on those
Yeah.
teams. I mean, obviously Stamkos and Martin St. Louis in Tampa Bay have really kind of propelled that team.
Vinny Lecavalier kind of made a mistake.
Yeah, he
going
did
back,
a little bit. But and in Toronto, obviously Phil Kessel has just been ridiculous. I think something that might be a little bit more interesting to you two and to our wonderful viewers out there.
22 of you guys.
22 views.
9 of the 10 worst teams in the NHL are in the Eastern Conference, and 7 of those 9 are in the Metropolitan Division.
Yeah.
I mean, you would expect the Penguins to win their division anyways.
Yeah.
But you really
Right.
expect them to rack up a lot of points and get that number 1 seed.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm really surprised. The Lightning, I'm
more surprised with the Lightning than I am with the Maple Leafs.
Because
in all
the
honesty.
Maple Leafs, people forget they were a minute away from winning against Boston, and maybe the Penguins don't. I know. Maybe
I've thought about that for an entire year.
I know.
I have thought about that for an entire
year. They give
year.
up 2 goals in a minute 30, something ridiculous. They had Boston on the ropes, so
they had them beat.
Right. I'm not surprised the Maple. They beat Pittsburgh the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised by the Maple Leafs.
They beat them 4-1.
Yeah.
I mean, it
was a pretty convincing win.
Yeah. I think I am. I'm more surprised by the Lightning just because they're so hit and miss. They could score 6 goals,
but then
or they could score 0.
Uh-huh.
The game we went to last year,
they scored one
or two goals,
and then defensively they were just awful.
Horrible.
Let's move on to the NBA. Starts this week.
Woo!
It starts
Woo!
tonight, actually. Game that's of interest locally. The Nets and the Cavs tomorrow night. The Cavs make their season debut. Do you expect them to go out there and beat the Nets, or?
I expect it to be a really good game because I think the Nets are a really far improved team. With the additions of Garnett and Pierce, and you've got veteran leadership on that team finally, and you still have Darren Williams. So hello, that's another huge boost to that team. I don't know if the Cavs win, but I really think the Cavs are a lot better of a team this year than what you've seen in the past as a whole. Because it's not like they sat idly by during the off season.
No.
Andrew Bynum comes in now to the fold. You have
Jarrett Jack come in. Addition.
And you've got.
There's a lot of potential. That's what it is.
I want to see the development of Dion Waiters continue.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see him have a 17-point kind of night.
You know who I'm really impressed with on the Cavs, and this isn't just pertaining to this year. Since he's made his debut, Alonzo G is a guy that just really, when LeBron left, taking over that small forward position. He's done a really good job since he's taken over, and not even close to LeBron's level or anything. But he's been solid in that 3 spot.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good hard fought game. I think. It could really come down to whoever has the ball last and the ability to make clutch. And then in that factor, I think I give it to the Nets just because they have Darren Williams, they have Joe Johnson, they have Garnett, they have Pierce. All players capable of making that last shot.
Yeah.
Not to mention Lopez. If you get him open down low,
or he could put up a putback.
Yeah,
if the last shot's missed.
I think it's going to be a hard-fought game, and I think the Cavs. Well, I guess it could go either way because the Cavs still need time to gel with Bynum and everything else. But the Nets also need time to gel as well because they have a lot of new pieces. I think I like the Nets in this one. B.
I'll take the Cavs with a 5-point win.
Okay.
A really close game.
Yeah, I
a
think
couple free throws at the end to make it
Yeah,
two possessions.
I mean, I'll take Brooklyn by like 3 or something. I
Okay.
mean, but I could very easily see Cleveland winning this game as well.
Right. I think
It's a very good
toss-up.
opening season
Yes.
matchup.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to a game that's actually in progress right now. What
BJ.
quickly becoming my favorite rivalry in pro basketball, the Heat and the Bulls. I
BJ.
love the hate between those two teams. Yes.
Ask me how I'm feeling right now.
How are you feeling?
Excuse my language on this one to all our viewers out there. I am fucking pissed off. Tell me you saw Bill Simmons' power rankings, preseason power rankings.
I did not.
He ranked the Chicago Bulls over the two-time defending champs Miami Heat.
I did not see
Are
that.
you kidding me?
I'm not
You
surprised.
think Derrick Rose makes that big of a difference to where all of a sudden they're just going to come into Miami and just overthrow what they're building a dynasty down there? Indiana has a better shot of beating Miami than Chicago does. I'm just, how do you not, I mean, I guess what it comes down to is people in the media. I mean, I know people love LeBron, but there are still a lot of LeBron haters out here on this because I mean, Ian, for better reasons, you can't deny the talent.
Oh no, I've
How
never
do you,
denied the
how
talent.
do you even justify?
I
wanna
do you
hear-
know Bill Simmons?
Well, he's an idiot.
Well, no.
No, he's really smart.
He's from Boston.
I don't care. I know. I'm just saying. How do you rank Miami number 2?
I don't know how you can deny a team. Or I mean, it's someone's power rankings. It's
I
not,
know it doesn't matter.
So
but
I, mean, but I don't know.
That's
I
like
don't know.
No, stop. That's like ranking Oregon over Alabama in the preseason coaches poll. It doesn't happen.
That
You
happens
have
sometimes.
no. You have Mario Chalmers, a healthy Dwayne Wade for the first time in probably 2 years. LeBron James, who's easily the best player on the planet, not even debatable. You have Chris Bosh, who can be hit or miss. You have Ray Allen. You have a former number 1 pick, Michael Beasley. You have another former number 1 pick, Greg Oden. Not to mention Haslam on the bench. This team is well on their way to a three-peat, and you put them at number 2. Just that's disrespectful. That's just plain disrespect right there.
Okay, thank you, Stephen A. Smith.
I'm sorry. I
I
know that's who I sound like.
More onto the actual game, and I understand your frustration. I don't really understand that either. It's 17-15 at the end of the first quarter right now. The Heat are winning.
And the savior,
close
I know.
physical game.
And the savior of the Bulls and apparently the NBA, Derrick Rose is 2 for 5 with 4 points, not really being this big difference that he's supposed to be.
Okay. Yeah, he probably will be at some point a bigger impact than that. But it's a close game, what you would expect. But if you take Indiana out, I mean, these are the top 2 teams in the East. This is what it's going to come down to. Chicago is right up there with Miami during their first finals run, and then Derrick Rose gets hurt. So, I don't know. I think this is going to probably be the Eastern Conference Finals matchup.
I'd assume so. I mean, with maybe Indiana kind of throwing the wrench in the.
They
don't
took
think
Miami to 7 games last year.
I don't think Indiana will get to play the Heat because Indiana's a team that's built to beat the Heat. They're big down low. They're physical. But if they match up with the Bulls before they get to the Heat, I think the Bulls are better at that game than Indiana.
This is where I disagree, only because last year Indiana took Miami to 7 games without a healthy Danny Granger. He's back this year. People forget he didn't really play all of last year because of his injury. You just have more scoring options in Miami and Indiana than you do Chicago. You take Derrick Rose, you're probably not going to shut him down, but if you contain Derrick Rose, who's going to beat them? Luau Deng?
No.
Joakim Noah?
No.
I'll take Paul George, Roy Hibbert, Danny Granger, and
George Hill.
I mean, there's just more. There's
Lance
more.
Stevenson.
Yeah.
Luis Scola.
You're making my point for me.
Oh, no. My point.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, and I know, and to be honest, not that Derrick Rose, I think, to me, he has a lot to prove this season. Especially last year when they came back, and I don't know how much of a difference he would have made in the playoffs. But to come out and say, hey, I'm 85%, but I'm not going to play till I'm 110%. If I'm his teammate, I'm like, come on, buddy, I'm 40% and I'm playing, and you're sitting there saying you're 85%, haven't played all year, and you're still. I'm
His
saying
mindset
I
on
know,
that,
but he better deliver this year. Is pretty
right?
much what I'm saying.
I mean, if he's better long term because of it, then you have to agree with his decision to do that. But like
he
you
better
said,
be good
like
this year,
you
then.
said, I mean, you lose a lot of respect of your teammates. I'm going out there at 40%. You're 85%. Telling the media, I'm not going to go out there until I can dunk with my left pinky. I mean, come on.
My thought process is, and this is coming from me, I've dealt with knee injuries. Knee injuries you do not mess with. Those are something that you don't rush into. If you don't feel like you can do it, don't do it. It's one of those things.
85% though.
I wouldn't trust him at 85% because I know what knee injuries are like. They're a different kind of animal.
And I will. I'll give him his respect. I'm just saying he better deliver this year.
Oh, I think he has to deliver for the Bulls to have any kind of success. Really.
And honestly, and I know I'm going back a couple years. I mean, this is just my opinion. The only reason he won that MVP when he did was because they were suffering from voter fatigue and they didn't want to keep handing LeBron the trophy. And they were like, "Oh, this guy's up and coming. Why don't we give him to him?" Because but that's a whole nother thing. And BJ, getting back to your point really quick before we move on, and you talked about the Bulls had Miami on the ropes before he went down. You can't disagree with me that LeBron is a way different player from 2 years ago.
No, he absolutely is.
So I just think with all the weapons, I just don't see it would take a major injury to somebody for anybody but the Heat to go back to the finals. I'm not saying they're going to beat a Western Conference team because you never know because they're so good out in the West. Mm-hmm. But if they don't make their fourth straight finals appearance, I would be surprised.
Let's start to wrap up. Let's start with what we're looking forward to most this weekend, and then we'll move on to our bowl predictions.
Man.
For me, I'll go since you guys don't want to.
Yeah.
I've got mine.
For me, I really want to see. I really want to see Ohio State pass this Purdue test. I mean, it's just they're kind of the ones that upset them most of the time. They get upset, so I mean, I expect them to win big, but I'm not going to believe it till I see it. It's kind of one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
Cody, do you have?
I'm trying to think here because at this point, the NFL really I still watch it for.
There's no good matchups this week.
Yeah, I mean,
in the NFL.
and I mean, being a Steeler fan this year, it's unbearable to watch. I think honestly, I think I'm looking forward to the Belair Martins Ferry game this weekend because I mean, for those of you around here, you know the importance and the significance of this game. I mean, maybe I'll watch it. The Penguins are on. Maybe I'll watch them this weekend. I mean, Ohio State, not really a big. I mean, it's Purdue and they do struggle, BJ, but probably the high school football game.
I've got two things. I've got Sparky this weekend.
He's probably got the World Series too.
And then watching my Boston Red Sox win the World Series.
Yeah, that would be big. Or disappointing, depending on how it comes out.
Okay. Bold predictions?
Bold predictions.
On the context of the bold predictions, I don't think it's going to happen. And on paper, it doesn't seem that bold. But for a bold prediction, I'm going to say Miami goes in and beats Florida State. I don't think it's going to happen, but if we're going to go bold, let's go bold.
Let's go bold.
You went bold. I mean, I thought if you just said they covered the spread, that'd be bold. I think I'm going to go...
The Jaguars play this week? You guys going to say they're going to get their first win again?
No, they don't play this week.
There's my pick.
Yeah. No, I'm going to say... you want to see bold and you want to hear bold?
Let's go bold.
Pittsburgh is going to go into Foxborough and win.
Hey!
That's bold.
Okay. The Colorado Buffaloes hand UCLA their second straight loss this week.
That's bold.
Will be my bold prediction.
That is bold. Till next week, I'm Cody.
BJ.
I'm Ian.
Thanks
See
for
ya.